Dead Aim is a game that I recently played, and damn, this game got atmosphere. I was definitely not expecting a full-fledged RE game disguised as a Lightgun spin-off. Dead Aim seems to subvert a lot of your expectations, like, oh, all these enemies are clearly going to get up after I pick up that shotgun, and then nothing. Actually, psych, you had to be in the middle of two groups instead to be ambushed. And then there's making the main antagonist hot way before RE8 came along, not to mention the Final Fantasy levels of villainy going on here and cheesy action scenes. All of these stand alone make it feel like RE5 if it were funny. But beyond that is a totally different aspect of genuine survival horror that mixes back in classic Resident Evil, with contemporary C-tier voice acting included.
Why you American spies choose to use such ugly guns is still a mystery to me. Morpheus.
This fusion of light gun and survival horror is unique to the Resident Evil Gun Survivor series, as the earlier entry, Survivor, had movement incorporated alongside its main focus of trying to be a light gun game, while Survivor 2 seems to be doing its own thing entirely. I haven't played either of them, because I knew they wouldn't be similar enough to Dead Aim in terms of vibes to warrant being in this video. Something about Survivor being stiff and lacking as much sound design in comparison, and Survivor 2 being a high-octane action arcade game, both lie in contrast to Dead Aim heavily. But then again, I could be wrong about my initial impressions. But regardless, the whole point of this video is just to shed some light on Dead Aim anyway. This game is very unique. As I've already implied, it's not your average light gun arcade on-rails sort of experience. Instead, you fully explore a cruise ship complete with interconnecting rooms, zombies roaming the halls, and all the droning mechanical hums to accompany it. The ship itself makes for an interesting horror environment, with its claustrophobic halls and isolation from civilization making you feel even more desolate. This is aided by the ambience that makes each room feel cramped or eerie, especially when being able to hear the groaning of zombies from some place in the room that you can't quite see yet. This synergy of the dark, hopeless environment and the imposing weight of the sound design is enough to create its own immersive, ambient, or psychological horror experience, which is further bolstered by the player's freedom. You can go at your own pace through these uninviting halls and not have to be rushed by an incredibly fast camera or enemies throwing themselves at you. Whereas in a normal light gun game, I feel like I'm being guided through a funhouse. And yeah, that house is fun, but the on-rails element doesn't make much room for tension or horror to build up. The games are more of a shock horror, or just plain fun that don't force you to confront the horrors down the hall that your mind is conjuring. This player freedom also makes it harder to control multiple crowds of enemies from different angles, where normal arcade games automatically switch between different perspectives, leaving the camera always guided towards the enemies right in front of you and not allowing the player to be attacked by those not in view, because obviously you can't do anything about them. In Dead Aim, being dropped into a wide room leads to zombies advancing on you at both sides if they're alerted. This, coupled with the slow camera or controller, can lead the player to be overwhelmed or make for a truly stressful or tense experience. You also have the choice of running away to reposition to make up for this, but this could also be a slow or risky option due to the tank controls, and makes the game feel well balanced. Well balanced, but not particularly hard. I know I selected normal difficulty for my playthrough, but the core mechanics were not entirely hard to grasp, and even with the roughest controller aiming I've experienced that felt more like tank aiming controls, defending myself was quite manageable due to either aim assist when zombies are getting back up, or the plethora of ammo the game supplies you with. Dead Aim surprisingly gives you infinite pistol ammo in save rooms, but this is balanced out by only having 6 ammo slots. It's more there so you don't get stuck anywhere, rather than an easy win supply. Plus, safe rooms are few and far between. I rarely went back to stock up in one, or save, and I almost ran out of ammo during a couple of boss fights. So at the end of the game, when you have to juggle 5 different weapon ammo types, it requires a little bit of brain power to properly manage your ammo, and therefore, infinite pistol ammo doesn't ruin the survival horror experience. Hell, I even had times in the sewers where I had 5 bullets left to ration out across an entire area. Many times throughout this game, I would try to stealthily take out enemies in order to conserve my resources, and felt like I was barely breaking even while relying on regular ammo drops. Let's go back to the save rooms. This is the only track in the game. Minus the credits or any music outside of the gameplay, the entire soundscape of Dead Aim consists of industrial hums, mechanical groans, and this single, ethereal track. It doesn't really make you feel safe, nor at danger. It's more of a peaceful track that you could take a rest to. Especially hearing this in the first save room within a dining room makes it feel almost comfortable enough to sit at one of those tables. It's a nice break from the relatively uneasy atmosphere of the ship, where a zombie could be running up from behind you at any point, and I think it totally fits the Dead Aim vibe. Speaking of the Dead Aim vibe... yeah. This game cold opens with you being choked out by Sephiroth, who's about to make your aim dead, but suddenly gets blown up by a grenade that not only doesn't kill you or the Final Fantasy villain, but doesn't burn up any of the ship either. Oh, and now you're in an unrelated part of the ship. Yeah. Dead Aim, while simultaneously being an incredible immersive experience, cannot and does not want you to take it seriously. One minute you'll be roaming the ghostly corridors of a desolate cruise ship, then BAM! You get hit across the face with that $5 Resident Evil 1 voice acting.
Wait! Before you said Donghua, what does that mean?
It means you are cool.
This doesn't entirely take me out of the experience. I actually love it, because as a Resident Evil fan, I'm so used to gaslighting myself anyway. But coupled with the intentional cheesy action vibe and general visual 3D jank, it comes off as a deliberate, funny gag that fits the RE brand around its time, when in reality this is probably budgetary restrictions. Dialogue exchanges are either awkward, incredibly corny, but occasionally heartwarming or nice. It's not always a miss, but it never took me out of the experience because it still felt grounded within the reality of the game. The main character is consistently written and comes off as this confident, direct guy that often gets made fun of by the other main protagonist. And this awkward overconfidence is charming in its own way, that even gets appreciated by the woman. Basically, these two characters still feel natural enough through dialogue exchanges in context of the game, because they are both completely awkward skinwalkers that malfunction when trying to interact with another human being. The only time when the cheesy action blends into the main game is one segment where you first switch to Fong Ling, and the game quickly throws out the unsettling atmosphere you were just wading through and hands you a goddamn machine gun to mow down hordes of zombies that definitely weren't there 5 seconds ago. Now, you may be thinking, how does this not break the atmosphere of the game? Well, since the game switches characters, it's able to impose different feelings onto each of them. So when you play as Fong Ling, it doesn't feel like a huge discrepancy, as if you were still playing as Bruce and suddenly you get handed God's holiest rocket launcher to obliterate Satan's cutest twink. Fong Ling is only used for short, high-action segments, and thus feels like a badass, while Bruce is utilized for the majority of the game, with its high-tension survival horror. Regardless, this is only one segment in the entire game, and feels more like fun Resident Evil than anything. Similarly, the bosses break up the pace of the main game in a good way. A few of them test your skill with the gun controls, especially the first and last. The first boss forces you to bait a heavy attack and quickly get behind him while turning around, which can be difficult if you don't know how to aim well or quick turn. And the last boss really tested my tank aiming control skills by actually forcing me to accurately move my cursor to multiple spots in a really short window of time, otherwise I would die. Honorable mentions to the chase sequence that actually made me jump out of sheer panic from him teleporting right behind me and nearly chopping my head off. Oh yeah, and the massive laser death beam that for some reason exists, that's either controlled by Umbrella or the Chinese government trying to take out Fong Ling after they made a deal with Umbrella.
Fong Ling, come with me to America. There's nothing left for you in China.
No, I'm going home. I belong to China.
Oh, Fong Ling, you didn't die in the satellite death beam like you were supposed to. Minus 50 social credit score. But that's it for all the immersion breaking. That isn't really immersion breaking action sequences, and there's plenty more to this game that I haven't really brushed up upon. How the ambience quickly switches based off of the different environments that you stand in. how killing enemies in certain ways can actually have an impact on the environment. Getting a headshot can leave a massive blood splash on the wall behind, or enemies have a chance of being propped up against walls they fall against when they die. This is especially one of the coolest visual design aspects that is very impressive for its time, and adds further immersion to the already dense atmosphere permeating throughout this game. I'm a huge fan of Dead Aim now. I highly recommend you play it if you can get your hands on it. Even without the Gun Con 2, it's playable enough and well worth the fun, immersive, and cool experience you get out of it. That's all I have to say. The video would be longer, but
Sorry, but my dance card is full. Looks like we accomplished our mission. Fangling, come with me to America. There's nothing left for you in China.
No,